now I'll give you really key things to do when you're in that closing situation. So first of all, there's a concept called trial closing, and what this is asking. By the way, a lot of what I'm talking about here today, if you really take one thing away from this, a lot of what I'm talking about here today is asking questions. Whether you are closing or you're doing the other stuff like qualifying or delivering your sales pitch, or what I'm going to talk about next with dealing with objections, a lot of what I'm talking to you about doing is asking certain questions. So some questions that you can ask are called trial closing questions. These are questions that check in with the prospect to see if you're going in the right direction, to see what they're feeling, what they're thinking. So you can ask trial closing questions every step of the way. So if you're in your first conversation with a prospect, what do you think about what we've discussed so far? How would this feature help you? So is this something that you could see your employees using? Are we heading in the right direction? So what these questions do, these don't basically say, are you ready to purchase? These are checking the temperature of the prospect. And these are very important because you might be going and delivering your sales pitch and talking about all these different things, and maybe you're not going in the right direction at all. The prospect, let me give you one example. So you might show up and be delivering a presentation, and your prospect, there was some miscommunication, and your presentation is on a totally different thing than what the prospect was wanting to see. If you don't stop and say, is this what you were expecting to see today? Does this match up with your expectations with what we're going to do here today? Are we going in the right direction? If you don't check in with your prospect, you might just continue and power through down this wrong direction, waste all this time. So the more you check in, the more you know you're going in the right direction, and trial closing can help you to do that. By the way, so some of these next ones, I don't do a whole lot. These are really kind of like a little pushy closing techniques. I'm going to give these to you, and maybe you like them, but anyways. So the assumptive close is basically asking a question assuming the prospect would like to move forward. So what time would you like us to put you down for a free consultation? Um, Going back to the refrigerator salesperson, this would be him saying, so what do you want, this in stainless steel or do you want this in jet black? When he's showing you the refrigerator, assuming that he's asking that question in a way that he's assuming that you're wanting to move forward. So it's the assumptive close. The alternative close is basically kind of assuming and giving two options. So we have workshops available on Monday afternoon and Thursday morning. Which one would you prefer I sign you up for? So you're giving two options there. Let the prospect lead. I probably lean more in this direction. So letting the prospect lead, you could kind of look at this as the soft close, is asking questions like, well, what would you like to do next? What direction would you like to go in? Do you want to continue to talk about this? When would you like to talk again? So here, I want to point out, you have to do the other things correctly in order to have a soft close. The reason why is because if let's just say you deliver a product pitch, right? You're talking about the product. Let's say you don't do a good job of building interest, qualifying, discussing pain points. Then there's a good chance if you say, well, what would you like to do next? That the prospect might say, I'm good, I'll get back with you. This works well when you've done everything right. You've communicated benefits, you've qualified them, you've identified that they fit well with how your product can help them. You've communicated how you differ from other competitors. You've shared some examples. You've talked about how your company is better than the other competitors. You've really checked all these boxes. You've built rapport, and you've trial closed them also along the way by checking in with them. Is this what you're looking for? Does this match up with what you want? And so then, when it's all done and you have nothing left to say or do, you can put the ball in their court and say, so you tell me, what direction do you want to go from here? So it's a really powerful place to be, and and it displays a lot of confidence and whatnot. You could turn questions into statements. So instead of saying, would you like to meet next week, saying, we should meet next week. So, this is a good way to demonstrate this tactic is in social situations. So let's say you're either with friends, or you're planning a date, or you're with someone that you have a personal relationship with. Instead of saying, well, what do you want to eat? Or what are you in the mood for? Or would you like to go to this place? Do you want to go do this? Where you're asking a question where you're making that other person decide and to try to figure out what they want or how they feel. Instead of saying, do you want to go have Chinese food, right? You can turn that question. I mean, obviously, if you're asking that question, you want to go have Chinese food, or you're making that as a suggestion, right? So you can turn that question into a statement to say, let's go have Chinese food. And that change, you're basically changing a question mark to a period, right? And delivering it in a confident, persuasive way can have an impact on getting agreement. And so you can apply that to sales by saying, instead of right here, do you want to meet? Do you want to meet next week for about 20 to 30 minutes for a demonstration? You could say, hey, you know what? Let's meet next week. Let's put 30 minutes on the calendar, and I'll show you a demonstration. So those are two totally different things. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of what we're talking about here today is all about asking questions. And by the way, I haven't said it here today, but I usually say it in just about every other training we do. The best salesperson is the one that asks the best questions, and that should be clear in this presentation, because that's more than half of what we're talking about is asking good questions. So certainly we have some hard closing questions we'll give you. Are you ready to move forward in the next step? What would you like? What would you need to be able to make a commitment to move forward? If you had everything you want, are you prepared to move forward? I like that one. If you have everything you want, are you prepared to move forward? And there's some other versions of that. Like sometimes, prospects ask us all the time about, certain feature, right? Like, does it do this or does it do that, and or whatnot about our system. And so sometimes I'll go back to them and I'll say, well, if it did that, or if we could get it to do that, are you ready to move forward? Because a lot of times people ask for stuff, and I don't know why they'll ask for stuff even if that doesn't really impact them moving forward. So push back on them and say, well, if I give you that, are you ready to commit to moving forward? So you can read through these again. I'd encourage you to download these slides. But these questions are pretty self-explanatory, but these are questions you can ask at the end of your sales process. Here's a tool that you can use, and it's called an evaluation plan, but whether or not you call it an evaluation plan, it's basically a list of steps that you and the prospect will go through together. And you could think of it as, this is what I used in my career, where I sold complex items that had a lot of steps, like during the sales process, and then after the sale, and like go live. Picture software technical implementations, but you could apply this concept even if what you sell is a little bit more straightforward. But think of this as a list of steps that you and the prospect will take together, right? And it can either be before the sale or after the sale or whatever. But ideally, it includes. This is about closing, right? So this is something this would be a tool you would use before you close the deal. And what it basically is let's say we're meeting and we're reviewing a proposal, or I'm delivering a presentation, and I present this plan to you, so that if we agree to move forward, continue to move forward together, these are the steps we're going to go through, and with each date and the owner and what we're going to go through, and you get the prospect to agree to those. Do you agree with that? You're wanting to move forward with this list? I mean, obviously the purchase is not the next step. So I'm not asking if you're agreeing to purchase today, but are you agreeing to move forward with these steps Or are you agreeing at least to move to the next step, right? That which would be like the first thing on the list. And they say yes. Okay, we agree to keep moving forward. Okay, so does this list? Do you agree with this list? That this list are the things that that need to be done. Is there anything we're missing? And so you might finish this list, correct the list together with the prospect. Are the dates realistic? Do the dates match up with the timeline that you need? Are the dates dates that you can agree to? I mean, I'm not holding you to this as a contract, but would be our project plan moving forward. And you get their agreement and their buy-in. And then what you can do is you can use this evaluation plan throughout the remainder of the sales process. One way that you might do that is when you check back in with a prospect and you say, well, you're trying to get maybe the prospect has gone quiet on you or not been responsive. You can go back to them and say, I don't know if something's changed on your side, but if you are still wanting to purchase from us and you want to have the implementation done by the end of the year, then according to our plan that we agreed to, we need to complete the step that I'm calling about today by the end of this month. So either we need to adjust the plan, or let me know if you're not wanting to continue to, or if you're able to move either we need to change the plan and move the date out, or maybe something's changed and we're not moving forward with the plan at all. So you let me know. I'm just worried about the plan. So this becomes like the thing you're worried about and you're managing to, and you've already agreed to the plan with them. So it gives you it helps you to get the prospect accountable to certain steps and to being responsive to you ahead of them actually signing the deal. A compelling event, and a compelling event could also be part of the plan that I just mentioned. But a compelling event is a date of significance, okay? And a good way to explain this is one way that I used this in my career was, if you think about piece of software or a contract expiring, think about a contract expiring and your proposal is for a new contract, and there can't be any time in between, right? So if the contract expires at the end of the year and your proposal has to start on January 1, right? The customer can't have no contract in place for a month or any days. So that's a compelling event. And so an example of a compelling events is contracts expiring, maybe a site is opening. Let's say someone's opening up a restaurant on the 4th of July, right? So, which is a horrible day to open a restaurant, but that's the first thing that came on my mind. But that's a compelling event. Let's say you sell them furniture for the restaurant. That date is an event. So site opening or moving, a system being discontinued. So those are compelling events, and if those are tied to what you sell, then you can use that date to help you to close. Maybe it might not be the difference between you getting the prospect to say yes and no, but sometimes when you're managing the sales process, your prospect might become unresponsive, or push back on you, and call me back at a certain date or whatever. So this is something you can use to control that and control the sales process and drive the prospect back to either talking or agreeing to move forward. Now, if you don't have any type of date that's really significant like that, you can manufacture a compelling event, such as creating a discount or promotion, or maybe the product is unlimited availability. One closing tactic that you can do is the sales takeaway, and this is a little complex. There's also one of our webinars on using this tactic. It's a whole conversation itself, but it's basically the sales takeaway to disqualify. So there are certain times where your prospect might be on the fence and you can't get them to move forward. You can't get them to say yes, but they're also not saying no, and you might kind of try to take away from them. And so that might be by saying, hey, maybe this isn't the right direction for you, or it sounds like you all are doing pretty good, so maybe you don't need this. It does not seem like this is something that you are really interested in. So that you're taking it away. Now, there's certain times when you want to do that, which is why I would encourage you to watch our webinar on the takeaway and disqualifying. But you don't want to do that when someone's expressing interest. Like if someone says, "Send me a quote," then you don't want to say, "Well, maybe this isn't the right direction for you." You send them the quote. You do this when they're not moving and they're idle and they're on the